You're listening to Tabletop Arcanum, a podcast dedicated to learning and exploring the hobby of tabletop gaming. Your hosts are Justin Taylor and Richard Geese, so sit back and relax as we talk, discuss, and joke our way through the hobby we love so much. Discover the universe of Eana and its many unique civilizations. Battle the loathsome forces of Canker, find the lost portals of the travelers, and ascend the stairs of the Fateforge. Welcome to a special episode of Tabletop Arcanum. This is Justin, and Ricky is out this week on vacation and doing, we'll say, live research for his segment on Games on the Go, which we teased was our next episode. But something landed into our lap this week, and we wanted to get some information out to you, the listeners. So we had the opportunity to get our hands on a brand new Kickstarter RPG setting called Fateforge from Studio Agate. These are the same folks who brought us Shadows of Esteren, so you may have heard of them before. And while we got our hands on not only the 400-page monster that is the adventure guide, but also the 320-page grimoire or magic book. And we're going to dive into those and what this is all about. And since it's live on Kickstarter right now, we want to get you the opportunity to hear about it, get a little bit more information, maybe just back it for yourself. So before we do, go with a little bit of a roll recap as we usually do. Since this is a kind of a midweek episode, it's going to be a little bit lighter and just me, so played a little bit more of Arkham Horror, the card game. One more adventure under our belt. This time we went back to the Spooky Mansion in Circle Undone, and it went pretty well. Not really trusting the Silver Twilight Lodge, but that's how it goes. We cranked out another session of Gloomhaven. This time we were working towards a personal goal. And, well, we got it. It was rough because it was one of those personal goals where the four of us were separated and each of us had to kind of reach our goal point in this session without exhausting and passing out. So it was very tricky. And got another case in for Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, the West End Adventures edition. And Sherlock Holmes is once again way better than us. And while we felt we had a good handle on what was going on, we got a lot of points, but it took us a lot longer than Sherlock Holmes. So back down to about half of what his score was. It is what it is. The game's a lot of fun. Do recommend it, but it is definitely something that if you can beat Sherlock, I more power to you. Once again, news is a couple things came out and were announced that I think are noteworthy. OP has announced another skin of the Rising series, so first Thanos Rising. We talked a little bit before about the European Dark Force Rising, which was a Star Wars skin of it. But now they're doing a Harry Potter, because they still have the license for that. So we're getting Death Eaters Rising. So more of a dice chucker card collection, using those to defeat Voldemort and his Death Eaters. Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition got another expansion announced. This is called Path of the Serpent. That's due out fourth quarter this year. I am very excited for this because we're talking jungles, Yig, and all the fun stuff that goes with it. And in anticipation, because Broken Token had just put out their big, massive compendium box for Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition, I needed to know firsthand, for personal reasons, but also wanted to pass on the message of they will be expanding that box to include kind of an upgrade kit so that Path of the Serpent will fit with it. It just won't be necessarily something that will fit right away because development, timeline, etc. has to happen first. That being said, it's looking pretty good from the preview that we've already seen from Fantasy Flight. Now, in our Kickstarter Corner, again, kind of a brief one because we're in between. Thunderstone Quest has less, as I'm recording this, less than 24 hours, and So if you want to get in on Thunderstone Quest with a new expansion and get some of the old Kickstarter bonuses and barricades and all that fun stuff, AG is still running that for a little bit longer. Everything's funded. You just got to jump on in. Roleplayer also released their expansion Kickstarter, which is the second expansion. First you had the base game, and then you had Monsters and Minions, and now it's Fiends and Familiars. So going with the theme, we're adding more to it. They've already funded, no shock there, but they are adding a lot more stretch goals. And most importantly, they are putting a big box up on the version here, because that big box is going to be able to store the core game and the 2 expansions and a bunch of the promos and stuff all together. Super handy instead of having all the boxes laying around. I'm always a fan of condensing down collections. So, without further ado, I'm going to go right into the big main topic, why I am recording early. It is the Fateforge review. I do have a special treat before I go into my thoughts of the books. I was able to reach out to Studio Agate and make a connection with them, sit down with some time, and talk to one of the team members. So why don't we cut over to that interview, and I'll catch you on the other side. So enjoy. So thank you for coming on to Tabletop Arcanum.
Well, it's my pleasure.
And so why don't we get you to introduce yourself? Who are you, and how long have you been in the tabletop hobby?
So I'm Clovis. I'm the head translator for Studio Agate, who has been designing Fateforge as well as a number of other RPGs, such as Shadows of Esteren or First RPG. And I have been playing role-playing games for about 50 years now, and I have been translating them in a professional capacity for about 10 years.
Great. You said 50, 50?
Oh, no, sorry, 15.
15, okay. I misheard you. So, yeah, 15 years.
Yeah, I'm not that old.
You didn't sound it. That's why I was a little surprised when I heard it.
I can imagine.
Yeah, I'm kind of likewise. I've been doing tabletop gaming and RPGs myself for about 20 years. So, Clovis, what's your favorite game?
That's a bit of a tough one, but honestly, I would probably say D&D because it's such a classic, and it's basically how I discovered RPG in general, back when I was playing Baldur's Gate and Neverwinter Nights and games like that. So that's basically what introduced me to role-playing games and what I started with, what made me go, oh, that's so awesome, I want to live my own adventures and such. So I guess a side tangent here, are you excited for the Baldur's Gate 3 announcement that happened? Oh, so much. Yeah, Larian Studios are really great designers. I'm such a huge fan of the Divinity games, so when I learned that they would be handling the production of Baldur's Gate 3, I really thought that no one would be more qualified to do that game than them. Oh, yeah, I definitely agree there. So it was a really nice surprise. So D&D is your main game. Is there anything recently that you've been playing that you've been really excited about? If you're talking about like recent roleplay games, not really, but lately I've been playing, well, some of the classics. I've been playing a Call of Cthulhu game and let's see, an Exalted game. And, okay. Yeah, so these are the games in addition to D&D that I've been playing lately. We've had long-running campaigns for these two. For these two, we've been playing nice. Masks of Nyarlathotep for Call of Cthulhu, which is an old classic. Yes, and they recently did a new module for that, bring it to the new edition, right? Yeah, exactly. All right. That's awesome because I'm personally a big Cthulhu fan myself. So, do you play the RPG on the regular? I don't necessarily play the RPG as much. I do a lot of the board games that are themed in that Lovecraft universe, though. Oh, definitely, yeah. Well, I've been playing like Eldritch Thor. You know the one? Yeah, I've been playing it a lot recently, and me and a couple of friends of mine are big fans of that game, so we've been playing it a lot. Right. I got a regular group that plays the Arkham Horror card game. Yeah, another classic. So let's talk a little bit more about Fateforge now. New Kickstarter just launched this week. Yep.
let's talk a little bit about the inspirations for the world of Fateforge. Eana.
Okay, so Fateforge is based on a lot of different inspirations. Iris, our main author, is really big into documentation. So she's really been taking a lot of like real life sources to draw inspiration from, and to really make it something based on reality, but with also our own elements. So like each of the 18 civilizations is based on its own inspiration and own culture. So, for example, if you take a Shihuang, which is like which would be assimilable to Asia in our real life world. So we've been like stressing rivalries, various kingdoms, monasteries, mysticism, and we've also drawn inspiration from the fiction and cinematography, and also more modern sources like manga or anime, which also has influenced the design of Shiwang. And another example, for example, for the Aeolian Isles, which are a very high fantasy region with flying ships and flying islands and stuff like that. We've actually been drawing inspiration from, for example, the Sky Pirates from the Miyazaki movie, Castle in the Sky.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that would be one of the inspirations for the Aeolian Isles. And basically all of the regions and the kingdoms and civilizations of Fateforge have their own sources of inspiration and their own like corpus of references that we've drawn from.
That's very exciting because as you guys got me the book to review, going through it and starting to try to like internalize some of this world, I was definitely picking up a lot of that like very heavy theme, very heavy like, okay, this is really this culture. This really is leaning towards that culture.
Yeah, definitely. So, we've really tried to give each culture, as you say, its own tone and its own very unique setting and its own inspirations. We didn't want like the whole world to be just one inspiration, one culture.
So far, from what I've seen, it's definitely paying off. So,
well, thank you.
Now, the big nemesis of the world is known as Canker.
Exactly.
So, can you describe what Canker really is and where the inspiration for that came from?
So, Canker is something that's kind of nebulous. It's always been meant as a sort of arch nemesis, as you say. It's like this big, all-devouring entity that's been plaguing the world for centuries, millennia, for basically as long as a humanoid species have existed. And we've really wanted it to be something unfathomable, kind of Cthulhu-esque, and it's one of the sources of inspiration we've drawn, and of course we've drawn inspiration from real life diseases, as the name indicates, and we really wanted it to be not the kind of big bad evil guy, but really a sort of a holy devouring and like hostile entities that would really be a peril that would threaten the whole world.
Okay, so more of it's so big, it's so nebulous that it's hard to even pin down.
Yeah, that's the idea. As I said, it's a bit like the old ones from Call of Cthulhu, which are something not really evil, but so unfathomably inhuman that they just can't coexist with humanity.
That makes a lot of sense. So Fateforge is set on the 5e or 5th edition setting rule set. So why was it? Why was 5e chosen? What were the benefits that you guys saw as a studio in that design space? And then were there any things that were hindering your design by picking 5e?
So basically, we wanted to pick a 5e because D&D and the associated system is really something of a legendary status, and it's really something we wanted to get into, and we wanted to do something as a sort of homage, but also make it our own game, and that's in part why we picked it, because we are all big fans of D&D to an extent, and the benefits I would say are that it let us pick a very well-known system so that we could really try to express our ideas and our creativity to as much people as possible, to really have our own story to tell based on this well-known system. And also we wanted it to do something different from Shadows of Esterin, which is a game that's very based on real life and harshness and mundane characters. And with 5e, we really wanted to do something more heroic, more epic, more action-driven. So that's what we liked about it. We really liked the refreshing and the classic aspect of a 5e and what it would allow us to do. And as far as drawbacks, I would say that that was also what was hard to deal with, because it was a whole system that not all of us were familiar with. Not all of us were used to playing the D&D or the modern editions of D&D. So it definitely required a lot of work to make sure that we mastered the system, and so that we could also assimilate it and make it our own with our own premises and elements. So we really worked a lot on why the characters were so powerful, why they progressed at such a rapid pace. So we worked a lot on the questions of fate, on heroism, and on questions like that to determine what the PCs could be and how they would come into play in the world that we designed.
In a nutshell, it's kind of a double-edged sword. It had most of the benefits were also some of the pains that you had.
Yeah, kind of.
Okay. So with that said, what is the standout feature that makes Fateforge different from everything else?
So it's really a sort of a set of characteristics that we've tried to put together and that we think aren't that frequent in role-playing games. So as I mentioned, all of the civilizations are very unique. So we've designed them so that you can play your whole campaign traveling through them, or you can also play a whole game within a single civilization. And that's what we try to stand out. We try to make the whole world interesting, to make it each piece of it unique, and so that it can be interesting whether individually or as a whole. And it also shows in the various themes. So we try to make it a game that's mature with the dark fantasy themes, such as war or the threat of canker, or two-faced evils, or even the ambiguity of evil, but also leave ample room for heroism, for epic stories. And in that regard, we are proud of what we call the modular system, and which is a system of options and tones that basically allows you to pick optional rules and such, so that you can really go for the type of atmosphere you want. And in that regard, I would say that's how Fateforge stands out, because it's very rich and very customizable.
Yeah, definitely picked up on that as I was scrolling through all the pages. So what was the largest challenge in the design of Fateforge that you guys have encountered so far?
So I used to say the hardest thing to do was doing everything from scratch, because we've done our own unique universe. So we've had to design it from the ground up. And Studio Agate we have a small team to work with. So it definitely required a lot of work and a lot of individual effort to make Fateforge what it is today. And so that was the hardest part, was designing everything, making sure the various books were going to be combined well together. So it was a lot of organization and planning and a lot of rigorous work to make sure that it would all hold together.
Okay.
And so it has basically been keeping us busy on daily or at least weekly basis from the early 2016.
Okay, that's so since early 2016. It's mid 2019, so we're talking about 3 years worth of development here, almost.
Yes, of course, the translation proper didn't begin before 2018, but
Okay.
The work on the Fateforge series itself has been since 2016. So it's
Okay.
been really a labor of love that we've put a lot of ourselves into, and
Mm-hmm.
we've really taken every step possible to make sure that it would be a quality product that would really be engaging to people.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned as one of the things that stands out is it's customizable and has this modular set of options,
Mhm.
so that a leader or GM, game master, whoever's running your game,
Mhm.
can kind of pick and choose what they want. So with that, how did you guys come up with the game balance if you are literally letting players say, I want this, but I don't want that?
So we actually took inspiration from Shadows of Esteren, where we also wanted the game to be more or less epic, or more or less low fantasy, or more or less hard, or more or less easy for the players.
Mm-hmm.
So we took that and applied it to Fateforge with the idea of making it really customizable. And so throughout the books and throughout also the scenarios, we have various options. Like for example, we have a gritty set of options. So if you want the game to be really hard, very realistic for the players, we have a system about wounds, about using armor, about the efficiency of long rests and short rests. And so these various options can be used to make your own experience. And so, for example, if you say, okay, I want my game to be very epic, very action driven, we have a set of action options which will make the pieces more powerful and setbacks more easy to recover from.
Okay. So the balance really comes from within each module then. Okay.
Module, you mean the scenarios?
Not the scenarios, but like as you were saying, there's, if you want to make it harder for the players, do this, and then that piece alone is balanced within itself.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes, we have, as I said, various categories from the modular system, and everything is detailed in every book we've designed. We have a cheat sheet of the various modular options, and then, for example, for the action options, for something more epic and more action-driven, you've got a set of crossed swords, and you see that stamp on the book whenever a game option is related to that style.
Okay. So pretty easy to call out because it's all icons then.
Yeah, we really try to make it easy to handle and very intuitive to go through.
Okay. Now, Clovis, you work as the translation for the books.
Yeah.
So this is going to be like right up your wheelhouse of, I've spoken with authors before about, especially high fantasy authors, and made up words, made up worlds, and translating it from English to Spanish, French, all the different languages of the world. So what are some of the unique challenges that an RPG system setting has when it comes to that translation piece?
Of course, the biggest difficulty would be to translate the original words. So it can be hard for when you're designing your own word with its own vocabulary. If you're not careful, it can quickly become a soup of original words. So we have actually tried to avoid that from the beginning. I'm kind of lucky in that regard because I work in a close coordination with the rest of the team. So from the moment the books are written, I can already have an idea of the kind of the difficulties that we're going to encounter, and I can offer my input to avoid some things that would be like untranslatable or that would like sound silly or be problematic in English. So we've had I've had to make some calls regarding some words that how they would sound in English in the best possible ways. But
Okay.
I've been kind of lucky to be able to like coordinate with the author from the
Hmm.
moment the text were written.
Okay. So um, while there is those challenges and pitfalls that you can fall into, by having you working closely with them from the beginning
Mhm.
as the translator, you were able to like, maybe we shouldn't say it that way.
Yeah, like um, actually in the beginning,
Hmm.
Fateforge was called Dragons in French, and we wanted it for the English translation to have something more unique and more that would speak more about our own universe. So
Hmm.
we had a talk about what word we should use, and since the Fateforge is such a big important entity in the world, and what it has a nice ring to it, I think. So we
Yeah.
decided to make it the name of the of the series.
Hmm.
That's an example of how we coordinated to decide the translation from the beginning.
Great. So the Kickstarter is live right now.
Yep.
Um, and I already saw that you guys had hit a stretch goal this morning,
Yes.
which was pretty exciting to see that we're a couple days in, you've already funded, you've already hit your first stretch goal, and announced
Definitely.
the next, and then of course announce the next couple ideas.
Mhm.
So, what is there any exciting plans beyond those stretch goals that you have in store for the campaign?
Yes, we've of course thought about what sort of stretch goals we could share with people and what things we could offer to the community. So
Hmm.
I won't say too much because that would kind of be spoiling what will be coming.
Fair.
But one of the next stretch goals will be a partnership with a Sirenscape, which will be designing. Well, I don't know if you know about a Sirenscape.
Does It's ringing a bell, but I'm not 100%.
So it's basically a designer of atmosphere, musics, and sounds for role-playing games. Um,
Oh, Sirens. Yes.
oh,
I,
Sirenscape. So I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce it right.
yeah, no, I think that's what it was sounding familiar, but
Mm.
the accent was throwing me off a little bit. Yeah, Sirenscape. I actually started using it in my personal game,
Oh, awesome.
so that's exciting.
So yeah, they will be designing
So okay,
Fateforge Sunsets, which will be customized to Fateforge and which we will make available to the backers as thanks for reaching an upcoming stretch goal.
that's pretty awesome.
We hope it
So the
is.
first, yeah, I hope that you guys hit that because the other ones that were announced, I was already excited for. Because you
Great.
have the scenario by Ed Greenwood first,
Oh yeah, we were really happy about that one.
which kind of goes back to you guys were picking 5e because of the iconic nature of it, and if there was someone a Dungeons and Dragons writer, Ed Greenwood is one of the top that pops to my mind all the time.
Oh, definitely. I was talking
So
about the legendary status of D&D, and I
yeah.
think that Ed Greenwood also has this very strong aura with being the designer of the Forgotten Realms.
Hmm. Exactly. So then the next steps that are waiting to be unlocked were um, getting print covers for the art, the covers of the book.
Yes, the art prints.
Hmm. And
These are the
then, so I was really excited to see that because while the Dragon Edition cover looks really cool, I really do like the original art too.
Thank you. Yeah, we are lucky to work with very talented artists, and
Hmm.
art and has always been a very big part of the games we've designed. So we really wanted to make the most of it to give quality stretch goals and game aids to our community.
Hmm. And then if that one's reached, the next one it looks like was the map of the free city.
I don't know but yeah, I think that's the one.
I was just saying, I'm looking at the update now to make sure I was looking at the right ones in order. So
Mhm.
those two definitely sound really cool. And then if we got Southern Escape kind of backed up behind that, it sounds like a great campaign with a lot of surprises coming up.
Yeah, we've been thinking about it, and we really want things that are pretty, of course, but also that players will be able to make use of. So, for example,
Hmm.
the free city map is very beautiful, and if you want like to play a whole campaign in the free city, it would definitely be a good game asset.
Excellent. And then the first wave shipment of the campaign is actually going to be picked up at be able to be picked up at Gen Con. Is that correct?
Yes, indeed. We wanted to give backers an opportunity to get it as soon as possible, and to also be an occasion for us to meet with the community and like really see each other in person and share that a special moment.
That's awesome. Besides Fateforge, since you'll be at Gen Con, is there any other Studio Agate products or things that you guys will be showcasing there?
Yes, we will have, of course, Shadows of Esteren, which I've been
Hmm.
talking a lot.
Yeah.
And we will also have Vermin 2047, which is a post-apocalyptic universe that we've been designing in French for the latest for a few years now,
Hmm.
and that we will share at Gen Con to show what it's about, and which is another game that we've been working on and that we'll be very happy to share.
Excellent. And then who from the team is going to be at Gen Con this year?
There will be Nellyhan, who is the director of Studio Agate, and Jin Lee, who is our layout artist and also one of the artists of the series.
Okay. Not making it out yourself?
No, I've been at Gen Con previous years, but we try to switch from some team members to the others, so that
Okay.
we can each have an opportunity to go out there and meet the community and enjoy going to Gen Con and to the US as a whole.
That's exciting. So, well, I know if nothing else, I'll stop by and say hi to everybody there.
We'll
Um,
definitely be happy to see you.
So the next steps, we've talked about the stretch goals that are kind of in the wings waiting. The campaign itself is for the Adventure and the Grimoire books, which are player-focused books,
Yes.
and they reference three others: the Arcana, in, Eana, and Bestiaries,
Yes.
which are more leader or GM focused.
Mhm.
So, is that kind of like the future plan, bringing those out?
Yes. We are currently working on them. Actually, they bis- uh, let's see, Bestiary and Arcana are almost done being written in French, and
Hmm.
Eana has a lot of work. We worked a lot on it, but we still have a long way to go to get it complete. And then,
Okay.
of course, once Bestiary and Arcana are written, we'll have to translate them, which is going to take some time, but we're progressing at a good pace, and we'll be happy to show them to people who are interested, and to give them
Hmm.
more material to play with. As things are, Adventurers has a lot of content. It describes the universe, and there are a lot of information about like the divinities and the setting
Hmm.
and optional rules and such. But
Right.
we'll really be getting more in depth regarding the universe with Arcana and Eana, and of course,
Hmm.
Bestiary will give a whole catalog of
Hmm.
creatures, including, of course, unique ones that we've been designing.
Right. And honestly, I think I'm as the entire project that I've looked at so far bleeds theme and it just drips in just gorgeous art. I'm really excited to see the best year, I think, most of all next, personally, because I really want to see what sort of like madness creatures are developed for the canker, or what other original ideas you guys have, and partner it with the great artists that you have.
Well, yeah, we do have a lot of things planned, and you can see actually on the Kickstarter page and in the player's
Mm-hmm.
guide. You have, for example, on the Kickstarter page you can find the Frost Giant, but yeah, the creatures of Canker in particular are these mystical, bizarre creatures that can look really messed up, and we're really looking forward sharing that kind of grotesque horror.
Beyond that, is there anything else that we should expect to see out of the Fateforge in the universe?
Well, Bestiary, Arcana, and Eana are the next 3 releases. We are still thinking about what we might do after these, but for the time being, that's as far as the horizon goes for us.
It's not a short horizon, so I'm glad to see.
Indeed.
And then, I guess in some, I know I wanted to kind of pose this to you guys: is if you were to put it all into 3 words, what would the 3 words be for Fateforge?
I would say, actually, we discussed it with Iris and Nell, and we would say colorful, epic, and surprising.
Yeah, I would not argue any of those at all.
Thank you.
So I think, Clovis, you guys have a wonderful idea here. When I got the media copies to start looking and reading and reviewing, I was like, every time I went to the next page, saw the layout, the art, everything, just, it's pretty. Like, it's a pretty book, and there's so much in there that I kind of had to take a step back and go, okay, I'm going to have to set some time aside with this thing. Cause...
Awesome. Well, that's definitely the kind of feeling we want to share, with all that sense of wonder when you pick something up and you're like, oh man, this is so cool. I so want to do stuff with that. And that's really what we've tried to put in every one of the creations we share with the community of role players.
I think the one piece, aside from the art, the theme, and like how unique the world feels, there's one little in the book. It's only like 4 or 5 pages. But it's a section about languages.
Oh yeah,
and how common isn't necessarily worldwide common, but it's the common language of the area. How the languages could potentially sound, like how reading and writing. Like, it's been a long time since I've seen an RPG book to sit back and dedicate pages to like language or writing. So
well,
I would.
Yeah, you can thank Iris for that. She's very into developing the minutiae of the universe and wondering about like the cultural and more down to earth aspects of a universe and how they could translate into play. Because of course, common as a language is a plot convenience. It's something that you have in D&D to say, okay, you all speak that language. No need to go about like how you would be able to speak with each other.
Right.
But of course, it can be used like that in Fateforge, which is the easiest option. But we've also tried to rationalize it and to may have a more realistic approach and say, okay, if you want common to be like just the language of the starting region, and have the whole difficulty of various languages and how you can understand each other, particularly when you go to foreign countries.
Right. So you'll have to pass my my wonder and my gratitude over to Iris, because like I said, I haven't seen that. I want to say I think I've seen it before early when I started RPGing, but it's definitely been a long time since I've seen like that nice, little like care to detail sort of situation there.
And it can be a very like amusing and interesting element to play in role-playing games. I was talking about Call of Cthulhu, and of course in a Mask of the Nyarlathotep you go to various parts of the world, so it can be really frustrating, but also very fun to like have to deal with a language barrier.
Well, Clovis, that's the series of questions I had for you today. Is there any closing remarks or anything that you or Studio Agate wanted to make sure we hit on before we call today?
Well, I will just say that we wish to thank everyone who has been involved in the creation of and the backing of Fateforge and Shadows of Esteren, be they the team members or the proofreaders that we've had the pleasure of working with, or all the freelancers we have worked with. And of course, every one of the backers ever since the Kickstarter for Book One Universe for Shadows of Esterin. We are truly grateful to be given such an opportunity to share our creations, and we really wish to do this for as long as possible and keep making people happy and invested with our creations.
The care and love shows in the final product, so keep up the good work, and I think you guys will be around for a while.
Well, we certainly hope so.
All right, Clovis. Well, it's been great talking with you today. I thank you for the time. Also, working with the coordination of 7-hour time difference here too.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Justin. It's been a pleasure to talk with you too, and we've been really glad to have the opportunity to talk about our projects with us and with Tabletop Fateforge.
Perfect, Clovis.
Sorry. So silly. It's Tabletop Arcana, right?
Arcanum.
Arcanum. Sorry,
It's all
I had
right.
a brain fart.
Well, and while I may not be able to see you in a moment, Clovis, at Gen Con, I'll definitely be stopping by and saying hi to everybody. Most likely, as I go through this, picking up my books, because this is just gorgeous.
All right. Well, thank you very much. We're very happy to see such enthusiasm, and we'll make sure we won't disappoint.
All right, goes. Thank you very much. You have a wonderful night.
Thank you, you too.
And welcome back. So, hope you enjoyed listening to Clovis and what he had to say about Fateforge. As you could tell, I'm pretty excited about it, and that was even before I finished reading all of the pages that they had sent me in this preview edition, which is an insane amount of reading. And it's one of those weird things, I don't understand, when you get absorbed into a novel, I just wanted to keep reading this. It bleeds theme. It is so just captivating because I want to learn more about the world of Eana. So it is full of little sidebars and paragraphs or half pages or even sometimes full pages of gorgeous prose that gives you a little glimpse into the world, a little short story, a little snippet. Usually it's themed around whatever section of the book you're in. So if it's talking about a particular species, all the species kind of have their own little subsection. If you're talking about the classes, it'll talk about, here's a story about a bard, or here's a story about a rogue. But beyond that, there's also other sections that will talk about the canker, or talk about the moons, or talk about any sort of little niche in life that they want to kind of highlight in these books. So, without further ado, the Kickstarter itself is still going live. They do have that Gen Con pickup option, which is going to be very exciting for people at Gen Con. And the main book is the adventure book. That is 400 pages. It is using the 5e system. The benefit that you get out of it is you don't need to have the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition Player's Handbook to use this book. All of the game mechanics of 5e are repurposed into the book, which kind of helps float that page count. But if you look at the regular Player's Handbook, it is not a 400-page book. So the other thing, that Player's Handbook has the magic and spell system. That's stripped out and put into book 2. So everything extra is expanding on it and building upon what the core system already is. As Clovis and I were talking about, the Eana world is very modular, and that is one of the biggest things that they really do well in this book. So when you're looking at the modular system, there's several different options that you can, as a leader, GM, DM, whatever you want to call yourself, can choose to add, mix, and match. There are primarily 5 categories. And then there's a couple other little twist ones. So you can have action, which is your heroic fantasy. This is going to be more epic level stuff, more feats and empowerment for the players and the characters being more hero-like. There's awakening, which is your ability to use magic in Eana. So there's different levels of awakening. You can be, non-awakened whatsoever and not have a lick of magical talent in your body. You can have a dormant where it hasn't quite fully realized yet, or you could have been born with it, or anywhere kind of in between. And they have kind of a rule set that attaches to that. And so shocking if your character's not awakened, magic is not going to be available to you. So things like a wizard or sorcerer are going to be kind of X'd off. They have a dark tag, which is going to be more horror-related, madness, corruption, those dark, gritty, those dark overtones, and just kind of that nasty, adult R-rated sort of material. So if you're playing with kids, you may want to leave the dark stuff out, unless they're really into like horror movies or something along that line. Next is gritty. Gritty is really neat because that's going to be your rough, non-heroic, more realistic style of modular rules. Think your George R. R. Martin, Game of Thrones sort of idea where it's not good and it's harder to heal, it's harder to live. Everything is going to be just tougher on the players, where if they overcome something, it's going to feel like they're overcoming something. They have an intrigue tag, so that's going to be more schemes, plots between factions, and a little bit more intrigue. This is going to be more of a role play area and more about character-on-character interactions. The tag that I love the most, because it just fascinates me, is the mystery tag. This is going to be arcane, supernatural, secrets, and twisty things. Like the Fateforge itself is tagged with mystery because nobody really knows where it is or exactly where it came from or what it does. But there's these ancient legends and history all surrounding this Fateforge that the fate chosen or heroes or adventurers go off, and sometimes they'll find it, but anyone who's found it never has come back. And one of the biggest things is like, yes, it'll grant you any wish you want with, not necessarily like, Disney's genie limitations from Aladdin, but pretty much you can't get rid of canker or other big things is what they're saying. Or at least at this point, nobody's said that. So much so that there's legends of, some of the active gods in the world are people who went to the Fateforge and got divine power. The last tag here that's optional, and it's elusive magic. So if the leader wants to use this elusive magic, you're not going to be handed the spell book and go, pick what spells you know. It's going to be, you have to find someone who knows it to teach it to you, and that all magical knowledge has to be learned and handed down. Something that kind of just gets overlooked in your D&D, like, great, I leveled up, what spells do I want, blah, 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 done. Lastly, they have a dragon icon, which is key to like the Fateforge icon. It is their way to just call out setting critical pieces that are just things that they're saying from Studio Agate, saying, don't skip this. This is a critical piece and to make this feel like Fateforge. So all those tags really help out. There's icons. So as you're reading through the book, you spot it, you go, boom, that's what it is. From a leader's perspective or a player's perspective, that's what you're going to read, and then you move on. Or if you're not going to be using it in your active game, you can just skip that section, not to be bothered with it. So upon expanding on the 5e stuff, one of the things Fateforge does is the detail of the backgrounds. So backgrounds in 5e, you pick it, they kind of give yourself like, okay, I was a street urchin. Here's a couple skills you may pick up. Here's a couple items you might have. And usually there's like a unique characteristic of an urchin knows all of the ways in a city. So back alleys and shortcuts, and they can kind of navigate a city without being hindered for time. So there's always kind of a perk for that. Fateforge takes a whole bunch of pages dedicated to how to build your own background, and then they throw the sample backgrounds at you, which are different from the 5e ones. So if you want to mix and match, you can do that, or you stick with just the ones in Fateforge. All in all, it's a way that someone broke down how to build your own backgrounds, and how to keep it in such a way that it's still game balanced. So, very, very excited for that. As you heard in the interview, there is pages, not just a page, but pages dedicated to the languages, how it sounds, what it's supposed to sound like, and where common, if you don't want to be like a universal translator blanket, looking at you, Star Wars, or Star Trek, or any other major multi-species fantasy, where everyone kind of just generally, elves have their own language, but they also have a common language that everybody in the world hears and seeks and speaks. If you don't want to, blanket coat that, they have a way of, okay, this area has this dialect and this area has that dialect. And when you moved from one country to another, it's just like the real world. I go to France, I don't speak French. I'm going to have a very tough time communicating unless someone knows English. And someone there might, and I might need to get a translator, or my discussions and stuff are going to be very, very laden with difficulty there. So, big fan of that language section, just as flavor. Now, another thing Fateforge does is, yes, it is your 5e, so you have your barbarian, bard, cleric, etc. classes, the ones you know and love, but they do also add a scholar class, which is a non-magical learned class. Interesting fact about them is they're going to have alchemical options available to them, but even if you want, they're so designed to be flexible that a leader can say, yeah, they can learn some fighter stuff, or they could pick up some rogue stuff, or maybe some ranger tracking. They're a scholar. They've learned something, and then they become really good at it, and then they learn another thing and become good at that too. It seems like an interesting class, and all the paths are archetypes of classes. So in 5e, a rogue can become a thief, or an assassin, or an arcane trickster. But beyond that, they include and rewrite some of those basic ones that are available in the player's handbook in Fateforge, but then they also, every single class, come up with their own path. Barbarians have a mage killer one, which seemed really cool. And sorcerers got like a psychic sort of vibe instead of dragon heritage or wild magic. They got kind of a psychic option. And these are all ways to enhance the world or change it up and say, hey, here's another option for you. The amount of extra feats, I was actually building characters for D&D not terribly long ago, and I kept going to the feats section and went, and it might be just my 3.5 and Pathfinder days and all that. I always felt limited. I'm like, well, I'm just looking at these and I'm only seeing the same like handful that I like, unless I'm building a character with a very specific idea in mind. That yes, they use crossbows and the crossbow expert is great for that. But if my character doesn't use crossbows, I'm almost never looking at that. There are so many feats in Fateforge that I can't even commit to memory how many new ones or interesting ones. But I never really felt exhausted from the lack of options, which is a 5e complaint. And I will say, shackled onto the 5e system, if options were your challenge, Fateforge takes all of it and says, here's even more. So I don't think options are going to be a problem in this setting book. On the topic of equipment and gear, they spend a good chunk of page count on bartering, what money is like, what gemstones are like, how the money exchange system works. With the intrigue tag, it does something that I've seen GMs and DMs do before, of going, oh, you went to a different country, you have local currency from your homeland, they don't use that here, and you've got to get it exchanged. And then there's a 10% exchange rate or something like that, and making that a new challenge, just like the language is, completely optional, but adds so much depth and realism to the world that it feels more organic. Just takes a little bit more work on the leader side of the table. The other thing that they did that I just love was a rarity system on base equipment. Not necessarily the armor or weapons, but your venturing gear, a silk rope versus a hemp rope. Silk is rare. And as a leader, you have the option to use a system that says it's rare. In this village or hamlet, they're not going to have silk rope. You've got to go to a bigger city for that. It's always nice to see the work from a GM's perspective or leader perspective. It's nice to see the work laid out and say, here it is if you want to use it. We've done the hard work. We've organized it all for you. Take it or leave it. That's the adventure book, and goes into combat, goes into all the things that you would need in a role-playing setting, so you're ready to go from day one with this book. Now, the one thing that is not included in here is spells, but with the Kickstarter, you get both the adventure book and the grimoire book, which is where all the spells live. I think this is fantastic to separate this out. How many times at a table have you been there and everyone has to have access to a player's handbook because that guy's a wizard, that guy's a cleric, they both need to know what their spells are doing, but then you as a barbarian need to still know what your stuff does, because how exactly does rage work? But then you're passing this book around because not everybody has access to a book or a digital copy or anything like that. So this is a book for the spellcasters, and the spellcasters can have it, and the non-spellcasters don't have to worry about it. Though, I will say with a caveat, there are some things that you do want to know in there. And that's just more lore, building, world goodness. In a 320-page book about magic, the first 105 pages are just how magic works as a system, in the world, covering things like a madness, if you want to go dark and gritty and horror themed, how a horror will work as a system. Canker is a very corruption based thing, and almost like a pollution in the mind and the world. So how does corruption work? And again, they use all those different tags saying this is something that is dark, this is something that is gritty, this is something that is heroic, this is a mystery. And you, again, over 105 pages going right into this. There's included in there is geomagic, so like world lasting effects of like spells were cast here. There's a lingering magical effect in this area. They give you a bunch of samples, and it's fantastic because it is just pure energy put in this book. And these are just the first two of at least 5 planned books. I cannot wait to see what the Eana, the world book is, because that's just going to be chock full of history. I'm going to be loving and to read that, just to read it. Kind of a nerd in that way, but hey, now from page 106 on to 300, it is all spells. So again, you're able to kind of use what you have, and the list of spells, alphabetical. All the spells have tags. So not only what school of magic are they from, but the other tags can be, hey, this is something that maybe if you're using a particular setting, because they added like different levels of magic that you may not want to have in your game as a leader. If you want to do that, like magic lock, which is like things that are tied to planes of existence or gravity related, that pretty much require a lot of magical energy is what they say. You can say, nope, no magic lock. Or what about mental stuff? Anything that has mind effects, and that way you can facilitate information. Nope, let's not use that. Or my scary one was life lock, where grievous injuries and diseases that can't necessarily be cured as easily. So dark and gritty stuff. Look at life lock, because that's going to be intense if you can't heal. Speaking of healing, one of the things I came across in the Grimoire book that I thought was fascinating is restricting coming back from the dead. What if only heroes and the fate chosen and those who are destined to do something are the only ones that like resurrection spells work on? Your average farmer, your guard, someone who's retired from the venturing life and just is done. can't be resurrected. So, like I've been saying, Fateforge is full of lore, fluff. I think Clovis and his team, Iris as a lead designer, they all put a lot of labor of love in here. The Kickstarter is live, so that not only it's pretty much done, but this is also going to get you a lot of extra materials and stretch goals, as well as a reduced price from retail. And I think it's definitely worth it. If you don't run a game in Fateforge and in Eana itself, I've already looked at some of the aspects and some of the optional things as maybe I want to drag this over into my regular D&D 5e game. Nothing's stopping you. That's what the greatest thing about resources are. It's your game. It's your world. Do what you want. Yeah, I'm personally very interested in it. I encourage everybody to check out the Kickstarter. They have a player's guide, which is a shocking 66 pages. Download that, read through it, and you will find yourself either drooling for more or not. It's ultimately your call. I do suggest checking it out. I think this is a fantastic thing that Studio Agate has put together. And honestly, do yourself the favor, look at their art and the layout of the pages. The Grimoire book pages look like they're like stained. There might be stuff spilled on them. And it looks like it might have just been a wizard spell book when you get into it. The art level on the adventure book is also equally as stunning. And it's a very good combination of these sidebars and the art and the layout that just put this beautiful book together. And Studio Agate should be very proud of themselves for putting something like this out. And I think it is well done. I've seen a lot of other particular modulars and books, and some are well done, some are not. The layout on this is very well done. The organization of where to start, where to finish, the separation of the spell book into its own book, I think was a fantastic choice. Next up, I would love to see what the leader books are like. The monsters, the ability to look at what the magic items are like in the world, because they don't really touch on that too much, because that's going to be just kind of like D&D put that in the Dungeon Master Guide. They're going to be putting that in the Arcanum, the Arcane book, which is your leader guide for Eana. That is what I have to say about Fateforge. It is epic, it is big, it is almost intoxicating just to look in the world and just see what's around the next corner. So, this is Justin from Tabletop Arcane. Wish you happy rolling. Check out Fateforge. I'll put the link to the campaign in our show notes so that you can have easy access to it. And tell us what you think. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter.
You've been listening to Tabletop Arcanum, hosted by Justin Taylor and Richard Geese, and featuring the original music by Paul Moore and Isaac Gilbert. You can follow us on most social media platforms. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave us a review on whatever platform you listen to podcasts. As always, thanks for listening.